I used to be upset by reviews until I saw who wrote them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Greetings from Transylvania.
That's
And
a
then you go,
problem.
that guy? I don't like
A
it.
lot of critics are critics because they really wanted to be writers. They just don't have a lot to contribute, and so they just shit on things.
Is that what I think it is?
Yes, it is.
Oh, brother.
And it's just like when you're young and you're new and you're reading it, you think that the guy who's writing it all badass. You'll think, oh, this dude must look like Lemmy. He must be this hard ass guy. And
Yep.
and then you see a guy like, that guy wrote it? Oh, fuck him.
Okay, time to shuffle off the buffalo. Keep going. All right.
And fuck everyone else who ever writes anything again. I don't give a shit.
It's not working.
So, this is a real movie? And not just a figment of my imagination? Okay. Rob Zombie's The Munsters. Ugh. I didn't think I'd ever talk about this man's line of work again after thoroughly dissecting his Halloween films, but I also didn't think he would outdo himself like this. I am legitimately speechless. Flabbergasted. Fucking bewildered. This makes his Halloween films look like the Godfather films. There were seriously moments during this film where it felt like I was watching Cool Cat Saves the Kids. And that's not even scratching the surface as to how bad this movie is. I'm sorry, I may have missed the Halloween deadline for this video, but I need to make sense out of this. I need to know why this happened, how this happened, and what can we take away from such a huge fuck-up like this. But, before we get into this movie, we need a little history lesson. The Munsters was an American TV sitcom that premiered in 1964. The show was about a family of classic monsters from Transylvania, with the first episode premiering just a week before another show with a similar premise, The Addams Family. You got the head of the household, Herman Munster, who's got that Frankenstein's monster thing going on, his wife Lily, the vampire lady, and Grandpa, who is basically Dracula. Although nowadays the Addams Family is a much more recognizable brand than the Munsters, in its heyday the latter was able to achieve much better ratings than the former, and the show has a very strong following to this day. And I guess among those fans is Rob Zombie himself. Yeah, despite this film coming across as a lazy cash grab, apparently this has been a passion project of his, and he's been trying to get it off the ground for like 20 years? Try to wrap your head around that. So after 2 decades of apparent deliberation, Rob was finally able to strike a deal with Universal. The 1440 division. If you're confused as to what that means, remember when Disney was going through that phase where they were pumping out direct-to-video sequels to their films like it was going out of style? They had a whole nother studio dedicated to pumping out those kind of films. The 1440 division of Universal Studios is basically that. A studio dedicated to pumping out those kind of films. They are responsible for such classic films as the live-action Woody Woodpecker movie, Death Race 3, Inferno, Cop and a Half, New Recruit, Kindergarten Cop 2, starring Ivan Drago from Rocky 4, Tremors 5. They made it to 5, boys. Bigger, fatter, liar. You know, in case you forgot about the first film with Frank Muniz, Tremors, Shrieker Island, Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, Aliens Ate My Homework, Bobbleheads the Movie, Bobbleheads the movie Werewolf, the Beast Among Us, Scorpion King 3, Scorpion King 4, Jarhead 3, and The Land Before Time 14. I'm so sorry, Don Bluth. So there's your first problem. The second problem is, well, Rob Zombie himself. Up until this point, he had exclusively worked on hard R horror films, and even then, the quality of those films were rather questionable. On the other hand, he did say he's been wanting to make this film for 20 years, so maybe he's looking forward to reaching a wider audience? A lot of people have said to me, finally, I can watch one of your movies with my kids. Which I don't have kids, so that's kind of meaningless to me. Oh, okay, so he doesn't care apparently. This is how I got into everything as a kid. This is for the next wave of monster fans coming our way. This movie is a gateway for more hardcore horror. Oh, never mind, he does care about kids watching this film. Alright. But hey, regardless of Rob's qualifications for making this movie, the 1440 division gave him the okay to write and direct this film. And the budget of $40 million? You mean to tell me that the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance had to get canceled after one season, and yet this low-grade piece of shit cost $40 million to make?! No. Actually, I'm not exactly sure where this information came from, but it was spread all over the web on different news sites and even on IMDb. Rob Zombie himself made a tweet stating that this is false information, and frankly, I'm just gonna take his word for it. For the sake of my own sanity. So, I guess this is the part where I stop stalling and start talking about the movie, eh? Oh, jeez. But before I do that, I'd like to make two things perfectly clear. Number one, I have absolutely zero nostalgic attachment to the original Munsters TV show. If you recall in my videos on Rob Zombie's Halloween films, I made a lot of comparisons to the original movie from 1978, and what that film got right in comparison to what horribly wrong with these two films. That came pretty easy since it's universally acclaimed to be a groundbreaking masterpiece in horror cinema, and one of my personal favorite films. I tried to be objective about the Munsters' success and following, but I gotta be upfront and say that the show itself really isn't my thing. I've seen enough of the show to really get a feel for what it is, and I don't know, something about the jokes and the pacing and the premise of the show, it just wasn't really clicking with me. I mean, as far as sitcoms about monsters trying to fit into civil society goes, I strongly prefer Malcolm in the Middle.
Hey, picture this. A laser-guided bee cannon. Bees shot out with the precision of a laser.
How would that hurt a robot?
Think. It's not for the robot, it's for the guy controlling the robot.
However, I will say that this is still a superior product to today's subject matter. I may make some comparisons here and there, but because this is a modern film and not a TV show from the 60s, I think it's more appropriate to compare it to another film that I'm pretty sure Rob Zombie thought he was making when writing the script. A film released over 20 years ago that also introduced a haunted family from the 60s to a modern audience, and was a much better film than it had any right to be and shockingly holds up pretty well. I am of course talking about The Addams Family, and its sequel, The Addams Family Values. And the less we say about the Addams Family reunion, the better. Number 2, this movie is so fucking bad that I have to use a completely different structure for this video. Now, usually when I talk about a movie that is especially bad, I like to go from beginning to end in chronological order to talk about how each scene is uniquely bad from each other. However, upon watching the film and realizing that it weighs in a lot more on jokes and situational comedy as opposed to plot structure, talking about the movie in chronological order would make for a very dull and repetitive video. Go figure, you make a dull and repetitive movie, the scenes tend to blend together. So instead, I'm just gonna separate this movie's badness into different categories. And if you're the type of person who thinks that me and other reviewers should have just done that from the word go, then congratulations. I found a movie so bad that it gave me no other choice.
I hope you're fucking happy.
Number 1. The premise. I think it's safe to say that a big reason as to why it took 20 years for Rob Zombie to get this film off the ground is that the very premise of the Munsters doesn't really fit that easily for a modern feature-length film, as in the premise of the original show. You see, there's a reason why the Addams family has so many different merchandise and adaptations, more like adaptations. The very essence of the Addams family is universally engaging from a horror comedy standpoint. They're a family that absolutely revels in scaring people, putting others in harm's way. And because they can endure so much, they rarely see what they do as spitefulness. It's just pure fun to them. With the generation gap between the 60s and the 90s, there's a lot you can do in terms of modernization. You can really up the ante in the pranks. Create more elaborate sight gags. Show the politically correct, white suburban lifestyle of the 90s, and contrast it with the utter creepiness of the Addams.
Is this made from real lemons? Yes. I'll buy a cup if you buy a box of my delicious Girl Scout cookies. Do we have a deal? Are they made from real Girl Scouts?
Now I was just gonna watch the first film just for the sake of research, but damn it, I was curious to watch the second film. And it was actually better than the first. Better jokes, better story, better characters, more funny and profound statements on white suburban society.
Years from now, my people will be forced to live in mobile homes, on reservations. Your people will wear cardigans and drink highballs.
This wasn't just a movie cashing in on an intellectual property. They actually had enough ideas to fill up another feature-length film. Imagine that. Alright, I might have gotten a little carried away there, so let's go back to talking about the Munsters. And maybe this will explain why there hasn't been nearly as many movies about this thing. Well, successful movies at least. The Munsters are a family of, well, monsters, but it's a little bit different. The Munsters don't revel in terror or destruction, they just try to live normal everyday lives. And they just so happen to be monsters. Their conflicts involve fitting into society, work drama, school drama, neighborhood drama, and other hijinks of that nature. Yeah, you see the problem here? A concept like this works just fine in the old sitcom format with a 20-minute runtime, but a film with an hour-and-a-half to 2-hour runtime generally has higher stakes than this. In order for this film to work, you would need a writer and director that is especially good at writing slice-of-life stories. Stories that make everyday life situations feel like a grand adventure in of itself, full of comedy and drama. Now, if this was Wes Anderson's Munsters, I could see that working. But this is Rob Zombie we're talking about. Up until this point, he had only made films that were gory, violent, depraved, and intentionally obnoxious.
Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these.
With open heart.
Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these.
It's not a bad movie, I'm just pretending to be retarded. I'm not saying an artist can't break away from his own traditions, I mean, that's something I've actually suggested Rob do in the past. But his limitations as a writer really shows when he forces himself to do the exact opposite of what he's been doing the whole time.
Whatever happened to our waiter?
He moves like a snail.
Seems like they've been waiting a while.
Oh, they are dead.
You're not supposed to explain the joke there. And hey, speaking of jokes, number 2.
Kill me! I'm in constant pain!
I realize that there is a lot of people out there that believe that comedy is subjective, and that judging comedy is pointless because what makes one person laugh might be totally different from another person. These people, with all due respect, are objectively wrong. Yes, we are human beings, and we're fully capable of laughing at the stupidest shit.
Mario, what'd you do with my spaghetti tacos?
It's the whole reason why memes are so popular, and why Family Guy's been on the air for so fucking long. But the thing that separates the internet shitposter from the guy that bombs on amateur night while giving it his all, and what separates those two from Bill Burr, are three important things: thought, talent, and effort. And a lot of money in some cases, but I digress. Even in casual conversations, there's a performance in being funny, even if you don't realize it. And if you're making a movie where humor is the main driving force, you're gonna need a writer that's actually putting some thought into what he's writing, actors and comedians that actually know how to be funny outside of their circle of friends, effort from cinematographers and editors that know how to produce laughs through the magic of filmmaking. Happy birthday to you. Rob Zombie's The Munsters might be the first comedy that I've seen that has failed in all of these regards. Even the worst comedies I've seen has standard cinematography. Let's start with the performances. In the original Munsters, you had Fred Gwynne, a very talented actor with a voice like butter.
Well, he certainly left in a hurry. I didn't even have a chance to tell him off. Well, I guess everyone looks kind of frightening when they first wake up.
You also had Al Lewis, a man so iconic in the role of Grandpa that he got his own spin-off show and a character dedicated to him in Gremlins 2. In Rob Zombie's The Munsters, we've got Jeff Daniel Phillips as Herman Munster. You might remember him from Rob Zombie's other movies. He was also the Geico caveman. Daniel Roebuck as Grandpa. You might remember him from Rob Zombie's other movies. And playing the lovely Lily Munster is none other than the one and only Rob Zombie's fucking wife!
Shoo shoo, said the maiden.
Now that's a crew, Gene.
So instead of an ensemble of well-respected actors that can bring some depth to the film, we've got a trio of Rob Zombie's friends. Oh, joy. Maybe I'm being too mean. Perhaps this is a Clerks situation where the film may have starred a bunch of nobodies, but the smart comedic writing and passion elevates the film to greatness.
No.
As it turns out, Rob Zombie's family-friendly comedic writing is about on par with his adult-oriented comedic writing in terms of thought. So after watching this film too many times than necessary, I've come to the conclusion that the jokes can be split up into 4 categories. Too long, would have been funny with better delivery, dead from the word go, and overdone cliches that stopped being funny and creative decades ago. Let's start with the too long.
How do you keep a grouchy, old, broken down vampire in suspense?
Oh, I wonder what the punchline is.
I don't know. How do you keep a grouchy old broken down vampire in suspense?
I'll tell you later.
Do you get it? He's keeping him in suspense. Oh man, remember when Herman was practicing his pickup game?
Hello, Lily. I'm still boring. Good evening, my dear Lily. I'm still uptight. Yo, what's up? Still glib. Listen, glib's no good. Hey, baby doll. We're shaking. Let's blow this pop stand and get our groove on. Herman's got the moves. Back it up. Back it up. Herman's backing it up.
Hey, numbskull!
Yeah, I'm really glad it takes 30 seconds to play out this scene. Not only is it funny and clever that this guy is basically Homer Simpson, but it gives so much insight on the character himself and what he's going through. I'm really glad this scene is as long as it is. Rob Zombie ought to be proud of himself.
Although it was a bit strange when all the other first-class passengers moved to the back of the plane.
Lily, my darling, how many times must I remind you, the average person isn't accustomed to being around people of such fine breeding, up close and personal.
Oh, you see, I don't know if you guys get the joke here, but typically on planes, they'll give away free drinks, and people will take advantage of that, either because they're alcoholics or they just don't like flying.
I would like another one of these delightful drinks. What do you call this?
Shirley Temple.
It's very strong.
Okay.
Oh, wow! That is relatable!
Do you guys get it yet? The movie itself knew it would take a little while for people to get the joke. So it goes on for 2 straight minutes. And it ends with Herman slowly walking out of the airplane, hungover. Just so the audience knows the consequences of drinking too much.
I'll never drink another Shirley Temple for as long as I live.
Yep. You can certainly see why it took a while for this joke to land. Now on to the topic of would have been funny with better delivery. You could say that some of the previous jokes fall into this category as well, but I specifically want to focus on this one scene. You see, Herman Munster was created by this scientist with the help of his Igor-like sidekick. Wait. Oh. Well, anyway, after Herman comes to life, he decides to take him to a talk show.
Some of the most substantial intellects in Transylvania have called you certifiable.
These so-called substantial intellects, well, they can just eat my and kiss my rosy little...
Oh God, I regret every decision I ever made in my life. I'm sorry, Mother. I'm sorry, Father, for choosing this path. So then Herman comes on stage and things don't go according to plan when he starts mumbling. Then he smashes a piano and then he starts telling some bad jokes on stage.
My mother-in-law fell down a wishing well. Boy, I didn't know those things actually worked.
Hey guys, I got an idea. How about instead of starting off with this forced joke, have the science guy try to remain calm and civil and hide his true nature behind the scene. Then, when Herman Munster appears on screen, have him say something that he learned from the science guy without realizing that what he's saying is absolutely horrible.
Like, what was the worst part about, like, the whole ordeal? Like,
probably working with all those filthy
that was really bad.
That way, it makes more sense for the science guy to chastise Herman later, without looking hypocritical since he was the one cussing on stage. But as it stands, the joke just feels tired, like we've been here before.
A horse walks into the bar. Bartender says, "Why the long face?" Speaking of establishments, I'm thinking of opening up a restaurant. I'm gonna call it Karma. There's no menu. You just get what you deserve.
If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits?
Now these jokes are just dead from the word go. You see, one characteristic of Herman Munster in this movie is that he's a TV comedian who inexplicably gets laughs out of people, despite his jokes being bad.
Wow, prices are going up. You know, that reminds me, I bought a balloon yesterday. I thought the same thing. Must be the inflation.
If you wanted to be really cynical, you could interpret this as commentary on the original show and its success. But personally, I just view it as lazy writing. I don't know, is that a cynical take too? Whatever. What a lot of people don't understand about funny because it's not funny humor is that it only really works if you yourself prove you have some sort of talent and can make jokes that actually work. It's why shows like Tim and Eric and Aqua Teen Hunger Force work, despite the humor being an acquired taste. The issue with this film is that the funny because it's not funny humor is indistinguishable from every other joke that's obviously meant to make you laugh.
Your mama's so stupid, she stared at a cup of orange juice for 12 hours because it said concentrate.
You call that jokes? The guy got what he deserved.
I gotta get a job. I mean, working at a mirror factory is something I could totally see myself doing. Sexy.
Now, on to the last category of jokes in this film. Overdone cliches that stopped being funny decades ago. Hey guys, remember Dirty Harry?
You gotta ask yourself one question. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Now you have to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well... do ya? Punks?
If that was God, then I'm Clint Eastwood.
Holy hell! Be careful what you wish for, punk.
Oh, you've got to ask yourself, do I feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk?
Oh god, I think you get the point.
You gotta ask yourself one question. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Shut your fucking face.
Now some of you youngsters might not remember the show Lost, but there was a character on the show named Hugo. He was basically the comic relief character and a naturally funny one at that.
We're here for him. Oh, we kind of like knew that forever ago.
As I showed earlier, the actor who played Hugo is also the Hunchback character in this film. Now, I'm not going to say that his character was great or that his jokes were well written, but Jorge Garcia struck me as the only actor in this movie that knew what he was doing in terms of entertaining a modern audience. Every scene in this movie where I came close to laughing involved him in some way, shape, or form.
We gotta feed the machine. We gotta cut some vinyl. The beast is hungry, and besides, Rome wasn't built in a day.
True, but I believe I was.
Yeah, well, that's beside the point. Oh, I knew it! I knew she was a phony. Vampire chicks are all the same. One bite and it's so long, sucker!
She said yes.
That no good fang banger. Wait, what?
There's no risks being taken. There's no attempt at modernizing the humor without coming across as pandering, unless you count this dating app joke.
Oh, so I noticed on your dating profile you only listed 2 hobbies, the Black Plague and Pestilence.
Which really begs the question, where did this dating app come from? A smartphone? I mean, we don't really see a single smartphone in the movie, and they're still using old-fashioned telephones and whatever. I'm not gonna go into the lore of this fucking film. Overall, the humor in this film just plays it way too safe. Which is shocking to me considering who made this film. I mean, it says a lot when the Addams Family movies from the 90s feel more like Rob Zombie movies than this new Rob Zombie movie.
If I must strike, instead I win. A hit! A very powerful hit.
Go!
Oh, Wednesday's at that very special age when a girl has only one thing on her mind. Boys.
Homicide.
Oh, proud death! What beast is born in thine eternal cells? Sweet oblivion! Open your arms!
Our parents are having a baby, too. They had sex. Why are you dressed like somebody died? Wait.
Where is that baby?
Which part?
one didn't age quite so well.
Number 3. Why does this movie look like shit? So the number one thing people talked about when the trailer for this movie was released was its awful aesthetic. And yeah, as much as I've whinged about Rob Zombie's previous films, the guy at least knew how to make a movie look like, well, a movie, and not some cheap Halloween party complete with costumes where their mouths don't even move when they talk.
We have your usual table ready. Please follow me.
What's with all of these LED lights? I don't think I've ever seen a version of Transylvania that looked like a Technicolor vomit fest. And all of these reaction shots where there's some goofy shape in the background just makes the movie look even cheaper than it already did. Why is Grandpa Dracula blue? This is legitimately irritating. Why is he blue? Later in the film, there's a joke about how the Munsters are a lot scarier than the normal people in Halloween costumes.
Those costumes really threw me for a loop. And I thought I was taking it to an extreme.
But the joke doesn't work because these three still look like people in Halloween costumes. At one point, they go to Paris on a green screen, and then to Paris on an obvious set. Trust me, guys, I've been to the real thing. This ain't Paris. Everyone screams and runs away because they're scared of Herman, and it's like, why? It's just someone in a bad Halloween costume. At one point, the Munsters are in Los Angeles, and I guess they couldn't afford to film downtown, so most of it is just an animated background. All of the phone conversations have this JPEG lightning bolt in the middle, and the whole time I'm thinking, how are any of these creative decisions faithful to the original show? Well, I did some research on the production of this movie, and as it turns out, Rob's original plan was to film the movie in black and white, and the studio refused. So I thought it'd be a good idea to put a black and white filter on the movie using my editing software, and the results are a lot more aesthetically pleasing. The haunted house actually looks like a haunted house. Even the reaction shots look a little bit better. And most importantly of all, Grandpa Dracula isn't fucking blue. Now, as interesting as this experiment is, it still doesn't fix every single issue with the movie. And I'm not here to review what could have been. I'm here to review what is. With that said, Rob's explanation as to why the film looks the way it does is just baffling to me. In his own words, he considered what the opposite of black and white would look like. A ludicrously colorful, hyper-saturated aesthetic. What? Why not just give the film a normal, haunted aesthetic? Regardless if it was in color or in black and white, it still would have been aesthetically pleasing. Now, I don't mean to get all tinfoil hat and start throwing out accusations. This is just a theory. I'm just asking questions. Please don't sue. But I can't help but feel like all of this talk about the opposite of black and white is just Rob being spiteful because the studio didn't give him what he wanted. It almost feels like he made the movie intentionally ugly. Therefore, the viewer had no choice but to set the film in black and white, thus making us watch it the way he originally intended. Hope it was worth it, Rob! Number 4. This 2-hour sitcom has a shit story. So here's a good rule of thumb when judging a feature-length comedy. If the jokes aren't making you laugh as hard as you did when you saw Superbad for the first time, then what else does this film have to offer? One of my personal favorite comedies is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. I'm sure a lot of people my age would say that the jokes in this film are dated and a little too reliant on cameos that were relevant at the time, but the movie still works if you watch it as a fun adventure film, with a wide variety of characters, landscapes, all tying into a pretty compelling story about greed getting the best out of people. So what the hell is this movie about? It's a love story for the ages, about a vampire lady who falls in love with a monster. They really like each other. They get married at one point. There's something about money, I think. At one point they go to Los Angeles to find work.
That's about it.
I mean, any story can be interesting no matter how simple it can be. The problem is that the romance is really uncompelling. The only thing these two seem to have in common is that they're both idiots with really stupid senses of humor. That's all we ever see from them. It doesn't help that the acting is just terrible. Why does Herman look disgusted to see his bride? Again, going back to the Addams family, you were utterly convinced that these two had an undying love for each other. All thanks to the great performances and just insane dialogue.
You were so beautiful, pale and mysterious. No one even looked at the corpse.
Your cousin Balthazar, you were still a suspect. I couldn't stop staring at you all through the eulogy. Your eyes, your mustache, your laugh.
You bewitched me. I proposed that very night.
They weren't just machines to pump out shitty dialogue.
And when Herman Munster puts his head to something, Herman Munster puts his head to it. Unless, of course, it falls off.
Can I confess something?
Please do.
I knew the moment I laid eyes on you that you were special. I understand if you don't feel the same. I'm just a regular gal living a boring, normal life.
Combine all of this with horrible pacing that's more fitting for a sitcom rather than a feature film, and you've got an hour and 40-minute film that feels like 3 hours. Not to mention all of the inconsistencies that just annoy the viewer. For example, the butler, played by Radagast the Brown, speaks normally throughout most of the movie, but for no reason, and out of nowhere, he has this stutter.
Perhaps I should stay. I noticed Lord Grimsby is canvassing for a new pool boy. Preferably, too, if possible, from Zoya Krupp. How is this possible?
Also, Herman and Lily find this weird creature in the sewers and decide to keep it as a pet. The problem? This happens in Paris, not Transylvania.
Oh, he's being just as cute as can be. What should we name him?
I was thinking, Spot.
You know, he looks like a spot.
So, I guess the joke here is that there are creatures in the sewers of Paris because they're so filthy, them filthy frogs. But now we've got creatures that live outside of Transylvania, so, I mean, like, what makes these three people so special that they stand out, my head hurts. And, like, there's a scene where they're terrified of these two, but, like, they've got these things swimming in the sewers. This doesn't make any fucking sense! Also, where the hell is Quasimodo? You know, now that we've established that there are creatures in Paris.
I now pronounce.
Alright, I'm getting sick of this crap. Let's just get to the ending, please. Now, for some reason involving money, they have to move to Los Angeles. After moving into a house and winning a Halloween contest, Herman walks outside the next morning to find this.
Everywhere you look, it's more horrible than the next. I think we've been invaded by outer space mutants.
What? Wait, hold on. What? I'm sorry. I need to do something real quick here.
Hush, damn it.
Have you ever come across a scene in a movie so bad that you didn't even know where to start? Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our list of the top 10 things wrong with this scene right here. Number 10. Bad editing. This one mostly speaks for itself, but we want to focus on this one shot.
I can't look.
The whore.
Don't you think it would make a little bit more sense if it was edited like this?
I can't look.
for one, just don't understand it.
Neither do I. What happened to all the hotties from last night?
Number 9. Herman is freaked out by the humans. The first reason as to why this doesn't make any sense is because his wife looks pretty human. The only thing non-human about her seems to be her hair and makeup. Most people wouldn't even assume that she's a vampire lady, just an extreme goth woman. Number 8. Number 7. This is yet another joke that goes on for too long.
We can't live like this with people that look like that.
I agree with my favorite son-in-law.
It's a disgrace.
Yeah.
Herman Munster, I can't believe what I'm hearing. I expect this from my father, but you? Everyone can't be as fortunate as us. It's what's inside a person that counts.
Well, then I'm gonna need a pair of x-ray glasses because I can't handle the outside.
He's right.
Oh my god, is this movie over yet? I wanna die. Number 6. Herman's creator looks like a regular guy. So, is it the clothes that makes Herman think these are creatures, or what? Number 5. What about the stewardess? You were just talking to one of these horrible creatures the other day. Number 4. Are you seriously telling me that these 3 didn't see normal people walking around Los Angeles or at the airport? Number 3. It's established that Transylvania has TV and possibly even the internet.
So I noticed on your dating profile you only listed 2 hobbies.
Are they seriously not familiar with what the outside world looks like even just a little bit? Number 2. Number 1. This almost good idea was ruined by bad writing. You could have actually fleshed out this idea and write it in a way that actually makes sense. But instead you threw it in the last 10 minutes and wasted our time on a backstory nobody even cared about. It's just the same old story. Same old song and dance! Number 5. Why did I spend so much time talking about this movie? I'd imagine some of you might be asking this question. Why this movie? Why spend so much time, effort, tearing apart this movie? This was a lot more than just a film. This was a natural disaster caused by a long stream of unfortunate events. And I'm not just talking about a filmmaker with a long history of not accepting criticism. No. This goes back even further than that. It all ties back to a simple TV show that was made back when the standards for entertainment were relatively low. As time went on and technology evolved and our view of the world became more cynical, we wanted our art to reflect both parallels of our life. This was seen as a sort of renaissance of cinema. We would see brand new talent come in and make us rethink the art of filmmaking as we know it, all culminating to a big bang. However, by the time the 90s came in, there was a bump in the road. While plenty of filmmakers and studios were thriving with great ideas that paid off, others were struggling, resulting in the first era of nostalgia-bait content. It wasn't all bad. Some of it was exceptionally well written. But as more of this type of content was being released, the big fear was Hollywood using this as a crutch for a lack of vision. Decades later, that fear has been realized. With a few exceptions, a lot of films won't see any sort of success unless it's tied to some brand. And with streaming services becoming the most popular form of entertainment, and internet algorithms determining a film's success just as much as box office numbers, companies are finding cheaper and faster ways to produce content. As a result, we have even the most die-hard fans of Star Wars, Marvel, and even Lord of the Rings feeling fatigued.
A superhero movie that looks like it should do well and doesn't do well, you don't get fired for it. But if you make a movie that no one thinks is going to do well, and you take a chance and it doesn't do well, you don't have a job anymore. So everybody's running scared.
And then we have this movie, Rob Zombie's The Munsters, a film based on a brand that nowadays most people don't even recognize, trending on social media and becoming one of the top 10 most viewed films on Netflix during that time period, earning its popularity not through effort, but by being so bad, that no one could look away. We have come full circle. Our standards for content is now low, once again. And the fault lies within the studios not challenging us. I could see someone enjoying this film for how bad it is. And you know what? Fair enough. At least you got something out of this nightmare. But as for me personally, I don't think I've ever seen a family-friendly comedy that felt so completely and utterly depressing.